I was 10 years old when my father signed a piece of paper and handed me to a stranger, and the worst part was that he used his good pen, the one he saved for important things. My mother stood in the corner of our small sitting room, wiping a surface that was already clean, wiping it again and again like her hands needed something to do because her heart had already made its decision and she didn't want her eyes to confirm it. She never looked at me. Not once. I stood by the door holding my small bag, a blue bag with a broken zip that I had to hold shut with my fingers, and I kept thinking, maybe she will look up. Maybe at the last second, something will change. Maybe love will win. It didn't. My father finished signing. He straightened the paper like it was a business deal. Then he looked at the woman standing beside me, a woman I had never seen before that morning, and he said, "Take care of her." Not to me. About me. Like I was a piece of furniture being transferred to a new house. The woman nodded and said, "That's what I'm here for," and that was the whole goodbye. No hug. No last words. No explanation that a 10-year-old girl could hold on to in the dark when fear came at night. I looked at my brother before I walked out. He was 14. Old enough to say something. Old enough to stand up. He looked back at me for 1 second, and then he looked at the floor, and I understood then that silence from someone who loves you is a different kind of abandonment. It doesn't make noise. But it leaves a mark that never fully fades. I walked out of that house without crying. I made myself a promise so quiet that no one could hear it, a promise I hid deep inside where no one could take it from me. One day they would come looking. And when that day came, I would be someone they could not reach. The woman's name was Mrs. Igioma. She lived in a small house at the edge of town and she smelled like shea butter and black soap. She didn't hug me when we arrived. She showed me my room, small, plain, with one window, and she said, "You will study here. You will not waste time. That is how you survive." She wasn't warm. But she was consistent. And after a childhood of chaos disguised as family, consistent felt like a miracle. She fed me. She gave me structure. She paid my school fees without complaining. And slowly, painfully, I started to understand that love and safety are not always the same thing. Some people love you and destroy you. Some people don't love you at all and still save your life. I studied like my future depended on it because it did. I had no safety net. No grandmother who would send money at Christmas. No uncle to call in an emergency. No parents who lay awake worrying about me. It was just me, sitting under a single bulb at night, reading textbooks until my eyes burned, because I understood something that most children are lucky enough not to understand at 10 years old: the world does not give soft landings to girls who have no one. So I built my own. I was 17 when I found out the truth. Not the soft version. Not the version they told the neighbors. We had no choice, it was difficult for everyone, we did what was best. The real truth. I had gone back to the old neighborhood for the first time since I left, not to visit, just to see it with older eyes, to measure how far I had already come. I was standing near a corner shop when I heard my aunt's voice, that familiar high-pitched voice that used to fill family gatherings with noise and gossip, and she was speaking to a neighbor, and they were laughing, and my aunt said it so casually, the way you mentioned the weather or the price of tomatoes. They even got a little money for it. Not much. But enough. The world went very quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that arrives when something inside you breaks in a way that makes no sound but changes everything. They hadn't just given me away. They had been paid. A small amount. Just enough to make it a transaction. Just enough to turn a daughter into a commodity. I didn't step forward. I didn't call out my aunt's name. I turned around slowly and walked away, and I kept my face completely still because I had already decided, years ago, that I would never let any of them see me break. That night I sat at my desk and I said something out loud to no one in the room. You never force your way into a room that intentionally locked you out. You quietly make sure you own the entire building. I didn't know yet how true those words would become. I only knew that I had been sold for a small amount of money and that I would spend the rest of my life making sure that amount looked like a joke compared to what I would build. I earned a scholarship at 18. Then another one. I studied business because I wanted to understand how money worked, how it moved, who controlled it, who got locked out of it and why. I worked during the day and studied at night. I learned how supply chains moved goods from one city to another and how small inefficiencies in that process cost companies millions every year. I saw a gap. I built a solution. A logistics platform, simple at first, connecting small businesses to affordable delivery networks. Then bigger. Then better. I didn't tell investors my story. I didn't walk into meetings and say, I was sold as a child and I am here to prove something. I walked in with numbers. With data. With a system that worked. Sympathy fades. Results compound. The platform grew. Partners came. Revenue doubled, then tripled. I hired people smarter than me in the areas where I was weak and I learned from every single one of them. I moved into a different city, a different world. I wore quiet clothes and spoke in calm sentences and made decisions that affected hundreds of people, and I did it all without once thinking about the small house that smelled like dust and boiled rice. I thought I had closed that chapter completely. Then the messages started. The first one came on a Tuesday morning, from a number I didn't recognize, no name, just, "Is this you?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and went back to the report I was reviewing. The second message came 2 days later, "We need to talk." Then calls. Missed calls. Voicemails I didn't open. Then my assistant stepped into my office one afternoon with the careful look she wore when she needed to say something uncomfortable, and she said, "There's a family asking for a meeting. They say they are your parents." I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then I said, "Book it for Friday. 1 hour. Conference room B. No special arrangements." She nodded and left, and I sat very still, because I had always known this day was coming. I had always known they would find their way back when they needed something. I had just never known what I would feel when it finally arrived. What I felt was this: nothing. A wide, flat nothing. Not peace exactly. Not anger. Just emptiness where pain used to live, which is what happens when you spend 15 years building a life that has no room for the people who broke you. They arrived early. Of course they did. I made them wait in the reception area for 20 minutes, not out of cruelty, but because I needed to stand at the window of my office and breathe slowly and remind myself of who I was now before I walked into that room. When I entered, they both stood up immediately. That surprised me, the standing. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Older. My mother had more gray than I expected. Life had moved for them too, just in different directions. "We heard about you," my father said quickly, like he had rehearsed this part. "Your business. Your success. We've been following." I sat down across from them and folded my hands on the table and said nothing. "We're proud of you," my mother said. Proud. That word landed in the room and just sat there, strange and misshapen, a word that had no business being in that sentence coming from that mouth. I didn't react to it. I just waited. My father cleared his throat. "We're in a difficult situation. Your brother's business collapsed. We lost money trying to support him. Things have become very hard." He paused. "We thought maybe, given where you are now, you could help us." There it was. Not love. Not regret. Not even an apology dressed up as something else. Just need. Pure, direct, transactional need, which was almost impressive in its consistency, because the first time they dealt with me it was also transactional, and at least now I could say they were honest about what they wanted. I looked at my mother. She had started to cry quietly, the tears running down without drama, and I searched myself for something. For softness, for the old ache, for the child who once stood by that door hoping she would look up, and I found only clarity. "You gave me away," I said. My voice was completely level. When I was 10 years old, you decided I was not worth the trouble of raising, and you handed me to someone else. My father opened his mouth. I continued. You didn't give me away because you had nothing. You gave me away because I was a girl and you wanted something else. And you were paid to do it. Not much. But enough to confirm that I had a price. My mother's crying became a sound now. My father looked at the table. We made a mistake, he whispered. No, I said. You made a choice. A mistake is something that happens without full intention. You chose. You signed with your good pen. You both stood in that room and watched me leave without a single word of goodbye, and you made a choice. Silence settled over the table like a heavy cloth. And now, I continued, you are here because the consequences of that choice, and all the other choices you made after it, have caught up with you, and you want me to absorb those consequences on your behalf. My father looked up. Something in his face looked like it wanted to argue, and I watched it arrive and then disappear because he knew, and I knew, and the room knew, that there was no argument available. I stood up slowly. I am not going to help you, I said. Not loudly. Not with anger. Just simply, the way you state a fact. Not because I hate you. I want you to understand that clearly. Hate would mean I'm still attached, still waiting for you to do something different, still hoping. I don't hate you. I picked up my bag. I built my entire life in the space where your love should have been. I studied in it. I worked in it. I became something in it. That space is mine now, and I don't have room in it for people who once decided I had a price. My mother said my name. The sound of it in her voice was strange, full of a feeling she had not shown me at 10 years old, and I stood for just 1 second and let it exist, and then I let it go. The greatest revenge, I said, is not hurting the people who hurt you. It's becoming someone they can never reach. Someone so complete, so built, so whole, that their absence stopped mattering a long time ago. I walked to the door. I forgive you, I said, turning back once, because I meant it, because carrying unforgiveness is a weight I refuse to carry for another day of my life. But forgiveness doesn't come with a relationship attached. It doesn't come with money. It doesn't come with access. I looked at them one final time. My father. My mother. The two people who made me and then unmade me and then, without knowing it, rebuilt me into something they could never have imagined. You gave me away, I said quietly. And in the end, that is the thing that made me. Then I walked out. Not as the girl who stood at the door holding a broken bag, fingers tight around the strap, hoping for one last look. But as the woman who had built a world they could not enter. And I did not look back. Not even once.